Ladies and gentlemen, it's a grand finale of another major chess event, and once again, it's none other than Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen. The two of them played in the finale of the Speed Chess Championship, which here in 2024 happened back in early September. And the two of them met in the very next online tournament called the Julius Baer Generations Cup. They played in the first finale. Magnus Carlsen won that finale. I covered it in a video called Insane Chess by Magnus Carlsen. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link in the description. And it was a very close match where Magnus blundered his queen, Alireza didn't take it, and everything in between. So then Alireza gets sent down to the loser's bracket, but he ain't no loser, and he immediately wins the loser's bracket and re-qualifies to play Magnus in the grand finale. And it was a very, very fun finale. So I'm going to show it to you today. That's what we're going to be doing. These two put on a show every time they play. And also there was a podcast. I don't know if you've ever seen this. I never saw it until I saw it on Reddit. Magnus did a podcast in Norwegian, so the English-speaking audience is not privy to such things because we don't understand it. But apparently he talked about the fact that when Alireza was like 14, Magnus invited him to a training camp. And he was like wowed by how good Alireza was, even as a young teenager. And now Alireza's like, 20, 21, which in the world of chess is like ancient. He's a dinosaur now. But I found that very cool. So he's known that Alireza was going to be a monster, and he has a lot of respect for Alireza for many, many years now, almost a decade, which is kind of absurd. Alireza was 14 in 2017. So it's almost been 7-8 years. So they open things up with e4. Magnus plays c5, the Sicilian, and knight f3. By the way, I guess Magnus was a minute late to the game. Minute late, which for him is nothing. Knight f3, he plays e6, and he plays the Sicilian with e6, a6. Many, many Sicilians. Now something has been determined. Here, Alireza spends some time. Spends 50 seconds because there are many moves. The main move is bishop d3. The other move is c4. White can also play just about any move here. Like against the Sicilian, White has been trying all sorts of stuff recently, but the classical main line is to put the knight in front of the c-pawn. Black generally goes queen c7, followed by bishop b4 ideas. But here there's also a very trendy line, which is this move b5. And basically, Black decides, I want to put my bishop, I want to put my knight, and I'm not going to touch these pieces yet. It's kind of crazy that in the Sicilian you can play like this, but you can. It's possible. Bishop d3, bishop b7, Alireza castles. Now we have knight c6, and White trades. White trades because retreating out of the center is not particularly great. And if you don't trade, Black can always play knight e5. So you trade, Black takes with the bishop, and now very simple rook e1. All of this has been played before. In fact, I think the players are following like the main line. Bishop d3 is the main line, bishop b7, castles, knight c6, takes. I'm looking at the chess.com database. Yeah, bishop d6 is a first move that is weird, which is why Alireza spends a minute. So here, Black plays bishop c5, queen b8. Queen b8 is an interesting move because it's kind of preparing ideas on that same diagonal. But what Black really doesn't play is the move bishop d6. I mean, I have no idea what this is. And now I'm going to go investigate, because when Magnus plays stuff, you pay attention. Because I put it on this channel, and you pay attention to this channel, so you pay attention. Bishop d6 is, again, the Sicilian puts a lot of pawns on light squares, which means the dark squared bishop is kind of like the mercenary. He's kind of like zigzagging, bobbing and weaving, and you kind of don't want to lose the dark squared bishop, right? So Magnus puts it here. And of course, what he's going to do now is he's going to use some flank attack, and maybe even the d-pawn to break up the position. Now, White is better, but the only way to prove this in this position is to play aggressively, which Alireza has no problem doing. Check this out. He plays a4, b4, queen g4, leaves the knight to hang completely. He could have just played queen g4, but he baits the pawn into a spot that's unprotected, and after knight to e7, he takes the pawn. So he's just a pawn up. I mean, it looks like he completely tricked Magnus. But Magnus now uses the ideas of the opening. He puts the knight on g6, targeting this pawn. White cannot easily play f4, because then he's going to be subject to a strong counterattack, which is kind of crazy, that you could just be up a pawn, but it's nothing special. Queen g4, he goes back. Queen b8 is the best move played by Magnus. These guys are putting on a Sicilian defense battle of the highest level. White is now up a pawn, cleanly. And yet there is a lot of compensation because this bishop and these diagonals are very weak for white. It's kind of like an avalanche ready to come down. And then Magnus plays this move f5, an amazing move. And everything in black's position is about to open up. White is going to have to go here, opening up both diagonals now. The rook is probably going to get active. And if the rook doesn't get active immediately, black is going to probably move the rook to the g file. So, I mean, and you may ask, why did Ali Reza play knight e4? Well, the thing is, what does Ali Reza play here? You take a look at white's position, it's actually really hard to make a move. You can't move the bishop because this pawn is hanging. Let's say you play rook b1, right? Well, now black plays queen b4. Suddenly you are hit everywhere. It's actually a problem, not to mention queen d4. It's a bad position for white. Like, white is not doing well here. So Ali Reza's got to make something happen. He takes on f6, gf6. Now he has to play f5 himself. This is the only way. And only Ali Reza can do stuff like this against Magnus. He goes directly into the fire. I mean, it's part of his name, right? The boy was destined to play positions that are spicy and on fire. It's in his name. ef5, queen f5, bishop takes h2. This is a fascinating Sicilian defense. The king goes to h1. The pawn balance is now restored. Black is left with 4 pawn islands. And in chess, there is this, I mean, this is a very advanced term. So for any beginners and intermediates watching this, I want you to highlight this moment in the video, 6 minutes and whatever seconds we're at right now. In chess, there's something called static balance and dynamic balance. Static, right? Like electricity. And dynamics. Static balance are things like pawn structure, piece activity, things that are stable. This is not stable. This is dynamic. Dynamic is everything that looks out of the ordinary. A static position has pawn structure together, pieces out. Black has 4 scattered pawn islands. That means statically he's devastated, but to offset your static weaknesses, you need to play dynamically. This is dynamic. I mean, there is a king attack going on. Queen is like pressuring multiple sides of the board. This position is chaos because it's rooted in disorder. Black's position does not have a level of stability to it, all right? So now you can go impress your friends, you can go ask somebody out on a date, and you can tell them about statics and dynamics. And if they pay attention to you, you know they're, marriage material. Queen to e5. Now a level of stability is being restored, except that is a sacrifice of a queen. Knight takes f6, rook takes f6, rook takes e5, and now you're not going to go here, because I get out of the way. Magnus does this. He's down a queen. This is what he wanted. Now we're really deep in the dynamic territory. Knight h4, knight f4 on the way. Rook h6 ideas, obviously not immediately, but Ali Reza now is feeling the heat. He's feeling the heat. This isn't coming. So what does he do? He gives the queen right back. And we go to an endgame. Still, black's position is dicey because the pawn structure is quite bad. But Magnus goes to an opposite colored bishop endgame. I mean, he's still kind of struggling, but Ali Reza always gets into low time against Magnus, probably because he's playing Magnus. And Magnus creates some counterplay here with his rook. You can trade the rooks here. It's an equal endgame, even though you are down a pawn. Opposite colored bishops, you can be down a pawn. You can actually be down 2 pawns and still make a draw. And so Magnus gets here, and he will draw this on his deathbed. And they trade some pieces. And the first game resolves peacefully. I mean, it was a battle. This was this kind of Sicilian defense that you actually do analyze. Like nowadays in the age of computers, we don't analyze anything with our brain. We're just like click, 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 cool game, click, 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 cool game. You seen that meme? Ah ha ha ha, again, ah ha 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 ha, again. Like that's what we are as chess players. We're like, ah, yeah, cool. No, but even draws can be very combative and exciting. All right, now Magnus gets a game with white. All right, Sicilian defense in the books. Now Magnus gets a game with the white pieces. First to 2.5 out of 4 is the winner. If Ali Reza wins, they play a grand final reset. Grunfeld. All right, Grunfeld defense, one of the most theoretically dense openings. Magnus plays like this, bishop g7. Now there are a million lines. Magnus again choosing something that is not that popular. Here the most popular move, bishop c4 and knight f3. And bishop e3. And then the 4th most popular move, played just a small fraction of the time, is this check. This check is played to be a disruptor. You're trying to get black to do something. Maybe block with the queen. c6, and now bishop a4. And basically, you have not allowed black to implement two of the ideas that he wants. c5 and knight c6. Well, everyone's like, all right, b5, a5, fine. You want to bait me? You've baited me, all right? Knight f3, castles, and I'm playing a4. This is not really how the Grunfeld works. This is not the way the Grunfeld is supposed to be played. But here's my c5, and here's my knight c6. Alireza still gets a very interesting position. The rook on b5 can take, absolutely. But if the rook takes on b5, you get skewered. So be very careful. Magnus plays e5. Very common idea to block out the dark squared bishop. Alireza plays takes. Ooh, he didn't take back. I thought just like takes, but no, he throws in bishop e4. Wow. Bishop e4, pinning the knight to the rook. And Alireza doesn't play defense. He counter-strikes. So now if you take the knight, I take your rook, you take the rook, I take your bishop, and I've got the bishop pair, and I have the activity. So instead we have takes on d4. This is hanging. This is hanging. This is a problem. It's a dangerous position. Queen d7. Knight takes b5. Queen takes d1. And the skirmish has finished. 5 pawns each. Magnus has a passed c-pawn. Same color bishop endgame this time. Bishop a3. Rook d8. And in this game, Alireza is doing a slightly better job this time. He's not down to like a minute yet. And what happens here is he just simply gets... Magnus, that is, gets a bit outmaneuvered. And he's close to equal here, but I would say from a human standpoint, he ain't doing too well. This pawn's super weak. The second rank is super weak. He's got doubled pawns. If Magnus was black against somebody here, most people with white would just simply lose. But Magnus is also an expert defender. He takes on e7, allows rook c2, and goes for some counterplay. But suddenly, and by the way, look at the time management. Again, Alireza, 2 minutes each. When he's equal on time, he does not tend to blunder. Now he's got to figure out a way to win this game. And in a crazy and cruel turn of events, king going to f3 is wrong. So the reason why this endgame is a win is because, not this exact position, but just in general, black obviously has an extra pawn. So black is going to try to queen the pawn, right? But what's interesting is that a bishop and an outside pass pawn, if the corner is the wrong color, if it's not the same color as the bishop, it's a draw. If all other pieces are gone. So if it's king, pawn, and bishop versus this king, and this king goes to this corner, it's a draw. Because there's no way to get the king out of the corner. You're going to stalemate the king. You don't know what stalemate is, no worries. You'll learn. So obviously Alireza has to give up this pawn and get this one down there, right? So apparently king f3 is wrong. Now black is winning because black is going to start pushing. King e6, bishop h4. Obviously he's trying to defend. And he plays h4. The winning plan here for black, the winning plan, is to get the king to g5. That is the way that black is supposed to win this position. You play king f6, I can check you, king f7. Now, a bishop trade just loses the game. It loses the game because white needs to go to this pawn. You can't. And in the meantime, I start running to this pawn. So king h4, king d4. King here, you're too far. You're just too far. Whoops, that would be bad, but even that is winning. And yeah, king b2, boom, boom, boom. Easy. So you can't trade bishops, and since you cannot trade the bishops, what happens here is after king f6, whoops, king f6, check, king f7, you can't trade the bishop, now I go here. Now I'm threatening to infiltrate. Now you can try to stop me from infiltrating, but now I can actually play my pawn to h4, and I'm still winning, and I play like this. So let's say you play king f4. I check you out of the way, now I march down. And I slowly advance down this board, and I'm going to try to win. Alireza, though, does this. Why does he do that? Well, that's the bad pawn, right? As it turns out, this is a draw. I just told you the promotion square has to be the same color as the bishop, yes. But not if there's a pawn there. This, by all cruel fate, is a defensive fortress, because the white king runs here, and there's no way to get him out of the corner. If the pawn wasn't there, okay, and the game ends in a draw, there's no way to get the king out of the corner. It's always stalemate, and crazily enough, this game has to end in a draw. If the pawn wasn't there, like, this is how ridiculous chess is, okay? I don't know how to demonstrate this. Let's say, you know, we just do something ridiculous where the king, you know, takes, boom, 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 boom. How do you get the king out of the corner? You go here. But with the pawn on a2, you can't go there. You can't go there. So the pawn actually stops the king from going to the most important square. If there was a pawn here, the king would need to enter this way, and you know, there's a pawn here. But Magnus saves the day. He saves the day because of his pawn. There's no way to get closer with the king. You still make the king. Unbelievable. Now, there are ways to lose. For example, here's a nice way to lose. White just goes here, gets mated. That's not going to happen. So Magnus saves the day. A clutch draw by him, and that means that the match stays tied. I mean, Alireza was so close. He just needed to be a little bit more patient. He needed to walk the king down the side of the board and probably queen at the right moment. But he failed to do it. I mean, it was super, super close. But all right, now Alireza gets white again. This time Magnus playing a Sicilian once again, knight f3. And he doesn't go for the con. He goes for the hyper-accelerated dragon. One of the most interesting openings in chess, but generally not played, especially in classical, particularly because after d4, there is the Maroczy bind. And this is just annoying for black. It's a very annoying opening. Knight c6, bishop e3, black kind of doesn't have any fun. This is kind of an interesting idea, queen b6. You repeat, and then really white can't do much better than playing back into a Maroczy bind. I think the best move is knight b5 if you want to avoid repeating, but you kind of land in the same thing. So knight b3, we get a Maroczy bind, and b3, I think already in a crazy, like you might not believe this, but I think Alireza already made an inaccuracy. I think he had to wait a little bit to play this move knight d4. But he was trying to stop knight e5. So for example, bishop e2, black can go knight e5 sometimes, but actually here you can jump in with knight d5. So for example, bishop e2, castle, castle, you know, if the queen cannot go to a5, this is the most important thing, and black can play a5, but then you can continue to wait, and then you can play knight d4, and now, you know, a5 happened and there's no queen a5. Very subtle details. And in a rapid game, you cannot think about all this, so you do this, but now black gets the activity, and black gets the optimal setup. In the Maroczy, if black is able to put pressure with the bishops and play a6 and b5 and rotate the knight, he's equalized. And Magnus is the best player in the world, so that's exactly what he does. He equalizes. I mean, he finds all the little subtle details of the Maroczy. He takes advantage. Alireza here has nothing better than to play knight d5, trade the pieces, trade the pieces, trade the pieces, trade the pieces. And yeah, I don't really have to tell you, nobody's going to win this game. 7 pawns each. Now, this is actually a really interesting position for intermediates to play against each other. Like here, I think intermediate, maybe 7 out of 10 win with white. Because white has more space, white will maybe make something happen over here, black will find a way to lose. But yeah, these guys are not intermediates. I mean, compared to Stockfish, they are, but yeah, and so we, you know, do a bunch of pawn pushing, and this is just a full fortress. Nobody breaks through. A good game by Magnus, who just plays his accelerated dragon and neutralizes. And it all comes down to this game. If Alireza wins this game, we go to a grand final reset. So he wins the grand final. I forget the term. Like, I think they already played the winner's final. This is the grand final, etc. So we have knight f3. Magnus taking it easy, taking it nice and easy. He's going to put bishops out, right? Bishop g7, bishop e2, bishop g2. And here he plays d3, so black can't play e4. Then he plays c4. This is just like lazy chess. It's like no theory, just getting pieces out. Alireza plays a5, taking some space. Plays h6, because he's looking to create some sort of attack. Plays c6, that can't be a bad move. e4, rook e8. Now we're going to get into a maneuvering game. So Magnus plays rook e1, Alireza plays knight a6. Going to maneuver his knight. h3, preventing anything from moving to the g4 square here. And bishop d7 is an inaccuracy. Black should have maneuvered the knight to e6 first. Alireza was trying to give every single piece a turn by playing bishop to d7, but that's a bad move. Apparently, he should play knight c5. Put some pressure on the center, take away d4, knight c5, put the knight on e6, and take away the d4 push. The second bishop d7 happens. Magnus catches Alireza off guard, d4. Now, black's position is not optimized to meet this advance. His pieces are on the wrong squares. Playing Magnus is is awful. I mean, it really is. It's like he will expose you so effortlessly. Pawn takes, knight takes, and now black is slightly worse. Nothing to write home about. Knight c5, of course, putting some pressure, but nothing special. This pawn's a bit weak. But after queen c2, you know, he's more focused on the defense. He's going to put his rook here. You're not really going to, you know, put huge amount of pressure. And queen c8 is also not a great move. But Alireza has a very concrete plan in mind. Maybe a4 was good. Trying to weaken the king side, weaken the queen side. For example, b4. You could even play a3. But okay, I digress. Queen c8, king h2, and this was Alireza's idea. Knight to g4 check. He's trying to make something happen. Gives away the knight, takes the knight back in the center. Magnus attacks the bishop. You can't take on c3 because that's a horrendous move. Because I would take back with the queen and checkmate you. Now we have f3. This cluster is better for white. It looks weird, but it's actually quite nice. It takes up a lot of useful space. And also d6 is still hanging. So black has to defend it, white has to attack it, black goes bishop e6. You cannot take this pawn. Why? Because after takes. It takes, play a4. My dog is snoring, and it's like the absolute cutest thing. You guys can't hear it or see it, but my dog is sleeping in the corner. And he just snored so loud, and it's absolutely the cutest. By the way, I upload a bunch of stuff about my dog on Snap. So if you have Snap, I post a lot of stuff there, just random things I do behind the scenes, like go to the gym, my dog. We got you know, couples content, husband and wife, some chess trading on there. I'll do some AMAs on there. So if you have Snap, Levy.Rosman, aka GothamChess. If you don't worry about it. Knight e2. Rook d8. Magnus poking, prodding. Alireza doing his usual down 3 minutes against Magnus. Rook d2, very easy position. By the way, look at the structure. This structure can arise out of multiple openings. So here we have a similar thing, right? These three pawns and these three, look at that, they don't change, right? But everything else is changing. I mean, even b3, you can say, look at this. I can highlight 4 pawns. So the structure is similar looking. In this game, Magnus was able to play a6, b5 pretty quickly. In this game, Firouzja doesn't have a pawn break. He can't play f5 because he would hang his king. He can't play d5 because white would play knight f4 and devastate the black position. He can't play b5 because of the same problems. Like if black plays b5 in this position, white would take. That's a huge weakness. That's a huge weakness. So you can't do that. So queen e7, rook d1, bishop f7, knight d4. Alireza down to 2 minutes, and this is where you don't want to find yourself against the goat. f4. Can't take this pawn. Looks free, but after bishop e4, queen e4, you get caught. Hand in the cookie jar. No escape. Can't get out. There's only one way out, and you're going to get run over. So that doesn't work. So he plays king g8 to get out of the pin, but here comes rook e2. And you just kind of sense like he's walking you down. This part of the game is like if Magnus was a fighter, he hits you in the liver. You feel your whole body shutting down. He's trying to come forward, you're trying to defend yourself, but there's nothing you can do. You try to fight back, you throw something at him. b4, he walks you straight down anyway. b4, the knight's got to go. b5, attacking you again. Now you have to ruin your structure. cb5, you've lost control of the center of the board. Knight b5 attacking your weakness. You're trying to bring in your rook. How are you going to defend d6? You're not going to defend d6. You're going to try to strike back. Queen e3. I mean, he's going for d6. He's going for a7. The engine has, you know, a way of defending it. Well, guess what? Alireza with 56 seconds on the clock. He's not just going to go down without a fight. d5, a lot of people would melt. Alireza is the fire. He does not melt. e5. Still, white is practically better, and black only has 40 seconds. Now Alireza brings the knight back from the edge of the board. He's removed one of Magnus's key attackers. Rook comes back to c7. Look at this. 7th rank defense. It's like an anime. I mean, literally, he's just like, he's going to hold down the fortress. He's like, nope, come and get me. Magnus taking on d5. Bishop d5 from Alireza. Rook d5, rook d5, rook d5. We're going to an endgame, but it's a tactical endgame. Queen e6. Queen d3. Ooh, that feels a bit weak. And the best move here is actually to allow rook d6. And you look like you're just losing here because you're just going to lose all these pawns. But there's queen a2 check. And after king h3, the only move is queen c2 because you defend the queen from infiltrating. I mean, it's not findable. You cannot play like this. Alireza does the second best thing. But now Magnus finds the only winning move. You would think here the move is to take the pawn in front of the king and get in with the... But no, this is winning, except for one move. King f7, saving the day, and there's no infiltration spots. And Magnus, of course, sees that. He sees that. I mean, this is just a high-level battle. So he calculates and he goes, I think this is the problem. He avoids taking the free pawn. He makes a move that looks like a freaking mouse slip. e6! It looks like you were trying to take. It looks like you're giving up a pawn. But you can't take this pawn. Because now queen g6 and rook d8 and the game is over. So e6 is brutal. Rook d8, rook d7, and you're just going for the passed pawn. You're going for the passed pawn. Rook g7 from Alireza, once again the best move. And now, again, the best move for Magnus. The only winning move. I mean, the winning move here, so many people would play rook d8 and just try to defend this pawn. They would play like queen d5, something like this. But this is wrong. How does this look wrong? Rook d7 is on the... Well, it's wrong because you weaken your king. But the craziest part, I mean, the winning move here is so tough. And he plays it. f5! What? How is that the winning move? It's the winning move because now the queen will no longer see the pawn. You open up the line for your opponent's rook. Like, how few people would play f5 with 57 seconds on the clock? But what's important here is rook d8 check, king h7, and rook d7. And the check is defended. The check is defended. And in the previous version, the queen would have taken the pawn, but now it can't. So you give a check, king g2, there are no more checks. Queen g6, rook g7, and Magnus worked all of this out with 15 seconds on the clock. Queen d7. He blocked the queen from seeing this, investing completely in his e-pawn. The king is outside of the square. To stop the pawn, you need to be in the square. And obviously, if this, it's just over. The square is even tinier. And now the threat is simply e7, e8. It's not taking. It's e7, e8, which wins the game. Alireza goes for counterplay. Look at this move. Look at that move. g4. You can't take it. Another good idea. e7. Just winning. He calculated that this is not a perpetual check. f3. And then here he blundered. Here he blundered. I mean, I had 5 seconds on the clock, so it's kind of understandable. I mean, the defense was pretty hard. He had to run this way, and then f2, then he had to come back. And the reason that this is winning, I mean, this is very tough to play because you kind of want to go for a run. The reason why this is winning is that queen g2, f1 looks like it wins, but actually I queen with check. That's it. That's the only reason. Instead, he comes here, and this is a draw because black has to sneak to the first rank. You sneak to the first rank, and you go here. This is the draw. Why? Because the king can't run this way. Why can't the king run this way? Because if you run this way, you lose your queen. That's the reason. So both guys here in a time scramble of 5 seconds, because it happens, miss that the king cannot run that way if the queen is on the back rank. Instead, they go here, and this is losing, because now the king can run. That's the difference. You had to sneak around to the other side. You know, I wish he would have played a completely perfect game, but now it's like that clown music. And queen c7. The king makes it to the other side of the board. You cannot stop the pawn anymore. And Alireza Firouzja resigns. Magnus Carlsen defeats Alireza again. That's 3 in a row in high stakes matches. I mean, look, he's the best, but Alireza gives him a fight every single time. I mean, these guys, they put on great performances. And it takes 4 games, it takes 3 draws, and a really clutch win in the final one. Magnus ultimately getting it done. I really like to watch when they play because Alireza plays... If Alireza just played a little bit faster, I feel like... I mean, it's like people look at my games, you know? They're like, well, if he just, like, didn't get nervous... Yeah, I mean, if only, right? But I love watching these two play. The games are so high level. The battles are so high level. Magnus victorious, and there is the Champions Chess Tour final that will happen in December of 2024, which I will be covering on this channel. I do believe Alireza will be participating, and Magnus, and some other really great players. But Magnus has gotten the better of Alireza recently. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.